Hey guys, Weeby Newz here, and today we are back with yet another video, and today we're going to be checking out more Kirby lore because I didn't realize that the old video was actually pretty old that I watched. It was like 4 years old, but thankfully RPGMonger, who made the last video, also made a sequel where they explain more Kirby lore, so I'm excited to check that out, and I heard some of you guys say it gets even crazier, so gonna be mentally preparing myself for that. But yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. I'm excited to learn more. He's so cute, dude. I love Kirby. Just a little guy, even if he is technically dark matter or void termina.
All right, but before that, there's actually one key thing I wasn't aware of when I made my first Kirby lore video, the occasional unreliability of English localization. More specifically in the most recent games, where the localization from Japanese to English sadly led to some key changes in the text of pause screen lore, usually due to the struggle of fitting said translations into the limited space in pause screens. They'd be
Is that mean? Does that mean what happened to my boy Haltman wasn't as bad as it seemed? God, I wish. I'm a bit confused. It seems like, though, the Japanese version is saying his soul was not in there, I guess. And then the English version was saying that his soul is in there a little bit. So it seems like it's a little bit better for Haltman, if I'm interpreting this right, but it might be better to wait until they explain it if they do.
Usually due to the struggle of fitting said translations into the limited space and pause screens. They'd be mostly fine in Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot, where the most notable change, in my opinion, was the removal of a line in Glacta Knight's lore. Said removal clarifying that throughout various eras, he
seems kind of like an important person, though, to not have the lore of, because I guess even though he's not, like, technically confirmed to be in the canon, he still seems to be a very big part of Kirby lore, and I don't know, he gives kind of like final boss vibes. Well, I guess technically it might be Meta Knight, who was the butterfly that absorbed him, who might be more so boss vibes. But he seems important. That's the point I'm trying to make here.
Removal of a line in Glacta Knight's lore. Said removal clarifying that throughout various eras, he's been continuously sealed away again and again, each time avoiding destruction. Though sadly, it's Star Allies that bore the brunt of these, where certain changes would go on to both completely change certain descriptions or alter them for the worse. Again, I'm not going to cover all of them, but to touch on the one.
I'm curious to see what it says about the butterfly. That's all I'm gonna say. That was definitely one of the biggest twists of last video.
Again, I'm not going to cover all of them, but to touch on the ones relating to the most important parts of Kirby lore, let me first correct the part about Susie. As opposed to what the English description says, she actually isn't continuing Haltman's work of mechanizing planets. Instead, she's using their advanced technology to aid others and stop any evildoers.
Okay, I like it. I looked up the word mechanizing and it said it could be just like bringing, you know, robots to planets. So that was what my assumption was. I was like, surely she's not just like taking over planets. And Kirby's just like, yeah, cool, Susie. You way to continue your dad's evil work. But yeah, I did think that sounded pretty weird.
Thought it was a bit weird that the game said she resumed mechanization after everything that happened. Then with Void and a certain knight everyone loves, a fair amount got lost in translation. For instance, a line that got removed entirely for Void implies that it's made up of 4 core forces in the Kirby universe combined into all chaos and possibilities: dream, dark, soul, and heart.
So they're made up of those elements, not just like, because it seemed like in the last video, yeah, it was like positive emotions that could make a being like Kirby, then there was like negative emotions that could make a being like dark matter or void. So I guess this does seem to change it up quite a bit.
While you could take that at face value and say those are meant to be literal elements, I feel they're meant to be more abstract forces. Regardless, it definitely alludes to these.
Because yeah, my initial idea would be them being kind of like elements, you know, like earth, wind, fire, but just like the Kirby elements, you know? Like, damn, he's not the Avatar? Lame. Sucks for you, dude.
While you could take that at face value and say those are meant to be literal elements, I feel they're meant to be more abstract forces. Regardless, it definitely alludes to these forces being behind quite a few things we've seen in Kirby thus far, so I'll be referring to them as chaos from here on out. Trust me, this will be relevant later.
Okay, so they're gonna refer to chaos as the combination of all those not elements. Abstract ideas, that's the better word for it.
Relevant later. Next, with Morpho Knight, its lore would sadly suffer the most from localization, and with quite a few important details being left behind. Namely, that Morpho Knight appeared due to Glacta Knight's screams of the many years spent living, which to me sounds like Morpho Knight showed up out of pity for the Knight. After all, it's been established that for untold eons after being sealed away, the Knight's very existence has been diminished to endless imprisonment with sporadic battles happening in between when whenever someone happens to summon him.
That is kind of sad.
Resents this too, as shown when without
Just randomly gets summoned and then has to fight before he gets imprisoned again. Yeah, that's a pretty sad existence.
hesitation, Glacta Knight destroyed Stardream mere moments after it summoned him. So with seemingly no real escape from his eternal fate, it only makes sense that the most powerful warrior in the galaxy wishes to be freed from this horrible cycle, the butterfly granting his wish by annihilating Glacta Knight and absorbing his power. We're starting off heavy with this video.
Wait a second. Trying to make sure I heard that right. I'm like, are they saying that like the butterfly killed him to like free him of his suffering? I'm like, wait a second. Make sure I got that right.
The butterfly granting his wish by annihilating Glacta Knight and absorbing his power. We're starting off heavy with this video. Then
Jesus Christ! Oh god, just literally ending his suffering. Okay, cool. Good start. Starting off dark. I like it. It makes it more depressing to think that Glacta Knight like wanted to die almost or be absorbed because he was just like in this cycle of like pain and like entrapment. I was like, that's sad. Is Glacta Knight evil? I think he's evil, right? It's kind of hard to keep up with some of this stuff.
Then, in another bit of pause lore that got cut in localization, there's a line that reveals the butterfly is fully capable of traveling between dimensions.
Oh, Jesus.
Considering recent events, this tidbit is more important than ever, but that'll have to wait. Translation mishaps aside, Kirby and the Forgotten Land isn't the only Kirby game to be released in the past 3 years. In the gap between Star Allies and Forgotten Land, there were 2 minor spin-off titles
already?
that both came with some pretty notable details. In Super Kirby Clash,
they release a lot of Kirby games, don't they?
I'd approach this game like you would many of mainline Kirby's extra modes, where despite not being canon, there's information inside that illuminates some things in the main universe.
Okay.
Or, well, things singular in this case, because at the very end of Super Kirby Clash's campaign, Glacta Knight shows up. And instead of the usual shtick of his lore further emphasizing how powerful he is or how he got sealed away, this is probably the craziest information dropped about him so far.
It's kind of interesting he's always like really focused in these non-canon games, you know what I mean? I wonder when he's finally going to enter the canon. I'm assuming it's going to be in one of the games mentioned in this video, but I guess we'll see.
See, rather than being called Glacta Knight here, this game refers to him by the all-new name of Eon Hero.
Okay, I saw that at the side, I was wondering.
At first glance, that when paired with the fact that this new Glacta Knight fight has him attacking you with heart spears, all but confirms that Glacta Knight was one of the 4 heroes that originally sealed Void Termina's Jamba Heart away. It definitely adds credence to him resenting being sealed away, as this confirms he went from saving the galaxy to being imprisoned out of fear. Though then in Kirby Fighter...
Okay, so he wasn't evil. People just locked him away because he was like so strong. They were scared of him. And then he gets killed by a butterfly. And he's happy about it. Oh, damn. Pretty rough.
Though then in Kirby Fighters 2, this game for the most part doesn't have much importance. Dubious canonicity aside, the one thing worth mentioning here is we actually get to see Shadow Kirby again.
Shadow Kirby.
Taking part in this game's battles as part of some weird prank on Kirby, it's good confirmation that the mirror world is still safe. After that, I guess the masks DDD and Meta Knight used to power up could have importance down the line, but there's nothing that points to that right now. So with all that taken care of, let's get into the real meat of the video.
Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Sounds ominous already.
When it comes to the lore of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, a lot has changed from how the previous entries handled lore. And I'm not just talking about how lore is now contained in gacha figures either. Like how Star Allies heavily
I was like, they finally not gonna put it in the text box? It's like, no. Now they're gacha figure text box. Oh, that's so random.
Like how Star Allies heavily implied that Kirby and Void are 2 sides of the same coin, one being born of positive energy and the other of negative energy, Forgotten Land comes in with even more implications like that. There's some hard facts here and there.
So I guess the negative energy thing isn't necessarily wrong though, because I was a little confused with the new introduction of like Void being kind of like made of chaos, you know what I mean?
Don't misunderstand me, it's just the sheer amount of implications here outweigh them by a lot. For example, the fact that this game takes place in an alternate dimension to that of Kirby's universe.
Oh my goodness, is he covering the car, or is that just what the car looks like? Kirby, they can't drive when you're on top of it like that, buddy. What are you doing, you goober?
For example, the fact that this game takes place in an alternate dimension to that of Kirby's universe. It's never explicitly said, but seeing how at multiple points it's shown that time there runs significantly faster than that of Kirby's dimension, it's the most reasonable explanation considering everything else we learn.
So did Kirby travel to this new dimension? That's what I'm assuming, since it's like the Forgotten Land.
Kirby getting sucked in around the same time as everyone else,
like
he clearly arrived much later than them all due to him struggling against the portals for a few extra pop star seconds. Or the fact that despite Elfilin coming back to Kirby near immediately after disappearing.
Why'd they make her thick? Was there a reason? Was it necessary? I'm just asking questions.
Or the fact that despite Elfilin coming back to Kirby near immediately after disappearing at the end, later he says that Claraline had to nurse him back to health after he separated the two worlds. Meaning from the perspective of
he had to separate the two worlds too? Interesting.
If anyone left on Popstar, Kirby was probably gone for barely any time at all. In turn, while I'll do my best to make everything as concise as possible, this means I will have to delve a bit more into theory territory than normal, as there's really no way to avoid it. Luckily, many have said
that behind him. The butterfly! It looks like a butterfly. Dark matter butterfly. That's the next step in this lore, isn't it?
As there's really no way to avoid it. Luckily, many of said theories do have substantial evidence, like that whole alternate dimension business. Though before...
It'd be like that sometimes. Sources do trust me.
Said theories do have substantial evidence, like that whole alternate dimension business. Though before that, let's start with the things we know for sure. If you notice any differences from what you saw in the game, that's because I'm referring to direct translations of the Japanese text, not what we got in the localized game, since sadly, like those mentioned before, bits and pieces were lost in translation. Long before portals opened.
I guess it's kind of hard with games like this where the lore is like so intricate, you know? It's like sometimes it's a lot more difficult to translate it over like perfectly. I feel like with fans of the franchise, they care enough to like really analyze it and make sure that like everything is getting translated over. Whereas like a localization team, they're just kind of doing their job, you know what I mean? So that makes sense. Honestly, I feel like there's a lot of Japanese games I've played that have kind of had similar issues, you know what I mean?
Long before portals opened up above Popstar and sucked its inhabitants into the Forgotten Land, there was a civilization much like our own.
Okay, so it sucked everybody in.
Its inhabitants were struggling with the ever-looming crisis of overpopulation, their world becoming too small for their civilization. Then, out of nowhere, came the ultimate life form, Fecto Elfilis, an all-powerful alien creature that's made its sole purpose to violently conquer world after world.
It's like, is he gonna be Thanosing them? Oh, I see your planet's overpopulated. Let me help with that. That's kind of what I'm expecting.
An all-powerful alien creature that's made its sole purpose to violently conquer world after world.
His design, too, kind of reminds me a little bit of the little guy that Kirby saved that we were talking about earlier. Like he could be like his son or something.
However, against the odds, the people of that world managed to put a stop to Elfilis' invasion by capturing the alien. With the crisis averted, they then begin to study its powers in Lab Discovera, turning its fantastical abilities into technology beyond their wildest dreams. Most importantly, replicating the method they used to get there in the first place by recreating its ability to warp anywhere, whether it be from one location to the other or even to another dimension entirely.
Okay, so that's how the portal was made. Interesting. I wonder how they defeated him in the first place. I was like, I kind of feel bad for him now that he's like trapped in gay baby jail, but you know, I guess at the same time he was kind of on his like freeze arc, taking over planets violently, so it's like, don't really feel that bad. I was like, I wonder how they tested on him, like if it was kind of violent or not, you know what I mean? I assume it wouldn't be very politely. You can't test on somebody politely, like, let's be real.
Although, while experimenting with said warp technology, Fecto Elfilis would be split into two creatures, one holding the small amount of compassion buried within them, and the other holding their invasive malicious tendencies. Once split, the newly created Elfilin would escape Lab Discovera altogether, never to be found by the civilization again.
Okay, interesting. I thought, like, originally that guy was gonna be, like, the villain, you know, of the game, but it's kind of interesting that's the civilization instead, almost, or that's kind of what it seems like so far. And yeah, I was thinking that too. I was like, man, that little guy looks so much like this evil guy. And so like his good side was split into the little guy, his evil side's in this Megamind looking fetus thing. I like how they made the nice one cute and then the evil one like Not cute at all. Not cute at all. Not gonna gain any sympathy for cute points, huh?
And would escape Lab Discovera altogether, never to be found by the civilization again. And as if Alphalus wasn't in a
That's
bad
good, at least.
situation before, now that they're fractured, the Eternal Capsule that served as its prison had become its life support. Because in this larval state, they physically can't survive outside the capsule without copious amounts of energy. Thus,
Okay,
once
damn.
they used up their invader completely and became a highly advanced technological civilization, the solution to their woes had become perfectly clear. Use their newfound warp technology to leave their cramped planet behind altogether. Their destination being pretty obvious if you've noticed certain parallels to other aspects of Kirby lore, which brings
Okay, wait a second. Oh, so the ancients also used that technology, I think is what it's getting at.
a bit more clear-cut compared to
Okay.
later ones.
Oh,
In possessed
dang, he looks kinda
Leongar's
scary to
pre-fight
fight.
speech, there's one line in particular that brings with it one of the biggest revelations in Kirby so far. As when he says that the Forgotten Land's inhabitants left for a land of dreams, just what other location does that sound like?
Interesting. Kirby's world.
That's right, the very place Kirby calls home, Dreamland. Now,
Gonna overrun that place and do creepy science experiments on living creatures. No, thank you. You're not invited to our cute little planet.
that's right, the very place Kirby calls home, Dreamland. Now, to be fair, this could
Yeah,
also
literally the
mean
land of
Kirby's
dreams.
universe at large and not specifically Dreamland, but there's definitely evidence that these people were here at some point. Because after abandoning both their planet and dimension, this civilization would go on to become the enigmatic ancients we've come to know all too well from many years' worth of lore. More specifically, the scientific
Okay, wait. So they're the ancients? Oh. Oh. I was like kind of piecing it together, but not really. I was like just thinking they were their own group that also did the same thing as the ancients. You know what I mean?
from many years' worth of lore. More specifically, the scientific
Crazy.
ancients, as the magical
Oh,
ones
the
were probably
scientific
already
ones.
in this universe when they arrived. Need more proof?
They're the ones that betrayed the magic ones that Highness was a part of too. Interesting. The scientific ones did seem to be kind of evil because based on the last video, it seemed like the magic ancients weren't necessarily like evil, you know what I mean? It seemed like maybe the science ones were just kind of intimidated by them and that was why they decided to betray them.
Proof? Just look at all the technology associated with the scientific ancients. Many
Yeah.
probably made with the magical ancients during their
Oh, you know, I thought the magical ancients made this guy, the clock guy. I guess it makes more sense that he would have been made by the science one since he's so like technical looking.
Many probably made with the magical ancients during their period of friendship. There's the Lore Starcutter for one, which
Okay.
specializes in
It's like a combination of both of them. Because I was gonna say a lot of those feel like a mixture of like technology and magic, you know?
There's the Lore Starcutter for one, which specializes in interdimensional travel. Ships like
Yep.
it most likely serve to take the scientific
Oh.
ancients to Kirby's dimension
wow.
in the first place.
Dang.
And who can forget the
That's
Clockwork
wild.
Stars? Alongside it being shown that many of the wishes they grant involve the use of opening portals to other worlds or dimensions, don't their cores look like a certain someone? It may just be
Oh, it sure does. Oh, interesting.
Clockwork Stars,
Interesting.
scientific ancients to Kirby's dimension in the first place. And who can forget the Clockwork Stars? Alongside it being shown that many of the wishes they grant involve the use of opening portals to other worlds or dimensions, don't their cores look like a certain someone?
Oh, that is so wild, dude. Oh, that's cool. That's a cool way to connect the two. I like that.
It may just be me, but the shape of Fecto Forgo's head in that capsule looks a bit too similar to the cores of Clockwork Stars to be a coincidence. This means that with this major reveal
I
of the
think so, too.
scientific ancients' origins, we now know Halcandra wasn't their homeworld. It was one of possibly many places they called home after leaving their original dimension. Alongside
Okay.
Halcandra, even Shiverstar could have been their home for some time. The abandoned civilization on that planet does bear many striking similarities to what we've seen in Forgotten Land. However,
Okay.
as the world could just be the Kirby Dimensions version of the ancients' old home, there's an equal chance its inhabitants were entirely separate. It'd be pretty funny if they recreated their original planet only to screw it up all over again. But I'll
Wow.
stop there
I wouldn't be shocked though. I would not be shocked if that was the case though.
to refrain from sprinkling in too many crazy headcanons.
Oh, what
Back in
the
the
fuck? I was like, the little human girl, is she an ancient now? What the hell? I guess we didn't really hear too much about her in the last video. We only really saw like a glimpse of her. I just know she lives on Shiver Star.
Back in the Forgotten Lands dimension, Fecto Forgo remained confined for eons.
Man,
So long,
crazy.
in fact, that the fauna left behind on the world would eventually evolve to a point of intelligence.
Oh.
Using this to their advantage, Fecto
Oh, they're
Forgo
so
would
cute.
slowly but surely spread its will over the planet from within their psychic dream dimension, while gradually gaining influence.
He's like turning them evil, basically. Trying to like push his will on them. I wonder if he's gonna make them like want to take over other planets and stuff too, because that was like his original version's like goal was just taking over planets, like destroying them violently, right?
While gradually gaining influence over all life on the planet, they'd managed to directly take control of a prominent animal named Leon when he discovered Fecto Forgo. Then, using
Ooh.
Leon's famous status among the peaceful animals of the world to rally them under the plots of Forgo,
dang.
Leon would become Leongar, and
Even the thick jaguar. Please say it ain't so.
through Leongar, this
Ah,
is
he's
when
so
the Beast
cute.
Pack would be.
Who used to destroy planets and torture its citizens violently? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Look at his little nose. He didn't mean it. He didn't mean it.
Through Leongar, this is when the Beast Pack would
Eyes are
begin
so pretty.
searching the planet all over for Elfilin, along with gathering food and the recently transported residents of Popstar to provide the energy Fecto Forgo needed to exist outside the capsule, which finally is where the
Okay.
events of
So that makes sense. He was like brainwashing them to want to get him out of the capsule so he can, you know, return to his former glory.
Kirby and the Forgotten Land actually start.
Ah, look at
Since
how cute
while
they are.
Fecto Forgo still had the
Besties.
power to open up portals between dimensions, the fractured state significantly destabilized the power, leading to portals seemingly opening up at random like they did in the beginning of the game. In the mere moments that Kirby struggled against the pull of the portals, Elfilin and the Waddle Dees would establish their village far away from the Beast Pack's usual operations. Meta Knight would take to defending them, all the while resisting Forgo's influence, and DDD would, well, fail at resisting to say the least. Seriously.
He's trying his best, okay? Leave him alone. Leave him alone.
Seriously, this has to be the most extensive backstory to the events of a Kirby game yet.
This
Don't
is a
worry,
lot.
there's still more to cover.
Not the butterfly.
Jumping ahead to after Fecto Elfilis's initial defeat at the hands of Kirby and Elfilin, merely destroying the ultimate lifeform's corporeal body wasn't enough to fully defeat it. Now existing solely as an incorporeal entity sustained by their own incredible psychic powers, Forgo
Okay.
retreated to their dream dimension. There, they'd begin to once again plan their return.
So he's like kind of existing in like a dream state, it seems like. They're just like a new version made out of like their energy alone.
Despite being in an even weaker state than before. The only real advantage to be
Looks so creepy now. They already kind of looked like an alien before, but now they look like an evil alien spirit or something.
the fact that they could use a Leon's body as their own. So getting rid of Leon's soul and smashing it to
ooh.
pieces for good measure, Forgo
that
began to
looks
create
cool.
an army of stronger doppelgangers from the residual psychic energy left over
Oh
from
wow,
Forgo
even the
influencing the
others
entire
too?
planet.
Okay, it looks like he made like a alternate version of the others. I really like the design of this guy though. He looks cool. Although he probably dies like a horrible tragic death, just like Haltman, unfortunately. Rest in peace, lion guy.
So getting rid of Leon's soul and smashing it to pieces so that they could use a Leon's body.
Rip! Jesus! Right after I said that, I knew I was kind of talking over that part a little too much. Poor Leon, dude! Damn. Still not quite as bad as Haltman though. I don't know. I don't know if there's ever gonna be as bad of a fate as Haltman.
Which sets the stage for the real important thing coming up, where all the backstory surrounding the Ancients and Elfilis was pretty significant. Equally so is the second appearance
Yes!
of Morpho
I wanna
Knight.
know about this
Unlike
guy.
its introduction in the What If mode of Star Allies, this marks its first appearance in the canon timeline.
Yes!
Now this is
Ugh,
incredibly
nice.
monumental for several
Finally, dude.
reasons. Not only is this the first time ever that a fight originating in
real.
Kirby's What If scenarios made the transition over to being 100% canon, it also raises even more questions about Morpho Knight itself. For one,
the
while Hell
eyes.
was definitely alluding to Morpho Knight eventually crossing over into the canon universe before,
The freaking butterflies everywhere. That's cool though, because yeah, I thought it was weird that like Glacta Knight always ended up being in like the non-canon games, even though they seem so important to the lore, you know what I mean? That's pretty epic that like it finally crossed. I guess it's still not exactly Glacta Knight, but Morpho Knight, but it's cool that it finally crossed over to like the actual canon.
and it also raises even more questions about Morpho Knight itself. For one,
The alien's like, don't land on me, bitch. I saw what you did to Glacta Knight.
For one, while Hal was definitely alluding to Morpho Knight eventually crossing over into the canon universe before, I did not expect it to happen so soon. It's still an incredibly mysterious entity, but we do still learn some interesting details. Namely, its appearance right before Fecto Forgo's soul was about to fight Kirby reinforces Morpho Knight's nature of reaping all-powerful characters that have lived unnaturally long.
Him,
as
Jesus!
much like
Man! I smell somebody strong! Gonna absorb!
As much like Glacta Knight before it, Fecto Forgo has also been trapped for an unimaginable amount of time, only surviving due to its sheer power.
I was thinking that, yeah, there is definitely some similarities between, like, his story and then Glacta Knight's story, too.
Only surviving due to its sheer power. But it could also be as simple as Morpho Knight absorbing him solely due to his power, like the Gacha lore states.
Oh, you can tell he saw that shit coming. Like, no, don't do it, don't land on me! Ah, poor dude, I almost feel bad for him. Almost.
Morpho Knight this time, it's actually what happens after you fight him that brings in a lot of very important illusions. Like how when you beat him, rather than only dissipating back into butterflies, Fecto Forgo manages to escape. And before we get to all of what—
Interesting, so he actually escapes? Oh. Okay, good for him, I guess. Poor Glacta Knight.
This confirms a pretty massive detail. You see, when Morpho Knight was first defeated in Star Allies, there was no such animation for Glacta Knight escaping, which leads me to believe that all this time, Morpho Knight still holds Glacta Knight within them, in a weird roundabout.
I had a feeling that was the case. I guess it's kind of weird because it was in like a non-canon game, but I still kind of assumed that was the case, you know? Especially since, I don't know, it feels like his design is so similar to Glacta Knight. I just assumed it was because he like took his form after he like absorbed him.
In a weird roundabout way, this means Glacta Knight's entered the canon universe too.
Hey!
Now this is stepping a bit into theory territory here, but all the signs point to this. After all, with it being shown that Morpho Knight still has many of Glacta Knight's attacks, this makes it incredibly likely that the supposed strongest warrior in the galaxy could be inches away from making his first canon appearance. We'll just have to see what awaits us with what's sure to be plenty of future Morpho Knight fights. On a side note, I do wonder if, like Morpho Knight, there's only one Glacta Knight that can be summoned from across dimensions. Because if that isn't the case, there could now be two Glacta Knights in Kirby, the one absorbed by Morpho Knight and the as of yet unseen one in the canon universe. But that's a headache for another day. Going back—
the next Kirby lore video! We'll cover that in like 2 to 4 years.
Going back to Fecto Elphalus's last shot at revenge, we're met with this game's soul boss equivalent, Chaos Elphalus. Having pulled the reverse Morpho Knight and taken some energy from it for a change, the simple fact that it's now called Chaos Elphalus hints at Morpho Knight's very origin. Again, stepping a bit back into crackpot theories here, remember all that stuff about Chaos from earlier? Alongside its components consisting of things that are all pretty important in Kirby, it's said to be the very origin of Void itself. Well, considering that Chaos Elphalus—
Okay, wait, what?
Well, considering that Chaos Elphalus only received the Chaos part of its name after taking some of Morpho Knight's power, that leads me to believe that Morpho Knight is either linked or straight up comes from this mysterious all-encompassing force.
Okay, so that definitely seems to confirm that they're connected as well. God, like my brain. This is so much.
Like many soul bosses, Chaos Elphalus makes use of various attacks we've seen past soul fights utilize. For a long time, I always thought it was just some fan service on Hal's part, nothing more. However, seeing that it only received set attacks after taking on the power of Chaos, that leads me to believe that every soul fight until now has had some sort of connection to Chaos.
Okay, so yeah, that kind of does mean, that does make it seem like it actually means something, you know?
After all, one of the things stated to make up Chaos in the first place is soul. As it stands—
Duh! Soul. It's literally in his name. Oh man, I can't believe I missed that.
We don't have enough puzzle pieces here to fully predict what this entails, but I'm certain that this is building up to something unbelievably immense. So after putting Elphalus's eons of struggling to an end, Kirby's power of miracles allowed the entity one last chance at rebirth. Thus, with Elphalus willingly rejoining with Elphalin to become whole for good, that just about wraps up all the new lore there is.
I hope you don't turn evil. It'd be kind of fucked up if he like absorbs him, then he's just like, yes, the power. I feel it once again. I feel the power coursing through my veins, Kirby. It'd be kind of cute though to see him like looking all evil though too. It's like, you're so intimidating. Who's an intimidating little guy?
As minor as it is, during the final battle, Elphalus does share one attack with another boss before the whole chaos thing happens. Just like Void Terminus' third phase, he also dives toward you, dragging a weapon across the ground. Not to mention, in Elphalus' theme, there's a portion that features very similar organ progression to that of Void Terminus' third phase too. You could easily chalk the two up to coincidence, but I felt it was at least worth mentioning here at the end.
Everything's connected, man. I guess that might need some more like confirmation from future games though. But kind of seeing the pattern so far, it definitely could mean something.
It is interesting how, in spite of how much of the Forgotten Land is shown, we never get a glimpse of what the scientific ancients might have looked like.
We never get to see what they look like.
Taking context clues and the cardboard cutout in Wandaria into consideration, I think it's safe to say they were humans or something resembling them at least. Adeline's got some splaining to do. So there you have it, another video of me incessantly rambling about Kirby lore. Just about finished that strawberry shortcake from last time, so how about a Kirby burger?
Oh my goodness. I bet you could buy a Kirby burger from somewhere. Probably like some kind of cafe in Japan or something. I keep waiting for that strawberry cake to mean something too. Once we get past the butterfly arc, I'm just waiting for the cake to absorb Morpho Knight or some shit. Yeah, cool. It's definitely interesting to learn some more Kirby lore. I'm a little sad my boy Dark Matter didn't make another appearance though. Well, I guess technically he kind of did since he's like related to Void Termina, who's related to the new people. It's all connected somehow, so I guess he's in there somewhere. He's in there somewhere. But yeah, that was super interesting. God, Kirby lore really has a lot going on, dude. A lot going on. It can be very complicated sometimes, just trying to like piece everything together because like so many things from like old games seem connected to new games and they all kind of like come together at the end. But it seems like it does a pretty good job of tying everything together. It's not very plot holy from what I've seen, like other game franchises that shall not be named. And yeah, it's interesting how dark they make the lore, considering I do believe these are still like technically kids games, but I guess they're able to get away with a lot since it's like in text box. They're like, 7-year-old's not gonna read a text box, we're good. Yeah, let me know if there's any other lore videos or other things you guys would like me to react to. And yeah, please do leave a like and a comment and subscribe if you did enjoy this video. But yeah, once again, thank you guys so much for watching and I will see you real soon.